I'm going to go backwards. So Rouge is a live visuals framework that I put out. It's kind of like a VJing tool. And so you can use it to like load in clips and mix and play clips. But what's kind of special about it is that it's modular and it can be used. It's sort of open, so you can make your own like effects for it. Like you could, like make it your own mirroring effect or like different things like that. And then, even more importantly, it also has modules for creating like real-time, what I call compositions, real-time compositions. So, so maybe you like model something in Maya, let's say, and then you like set up your virtual scene. You have a camera and stuff like that, and in terms of it being a real-time composition, in this case, you can like manipulate your model or like move your camera or something like that, or change like the texturing on the model in real time and render that and display it and mix it in with the other clips and stuff like that. In this case, like I modeled just one little tentacle, one tendril kind of thing, and then in the graphics pipeline, I'm repeating it, and then they're like individually waving around. What I think is interesting about this piece is that combining like real-time rendering with a traditional graphics pipeline. So the filmmaker rendered the whole documentary out kind of based on this template. So like all of the content fit within these triangles. And I took that and I sort of broke it up and like textured it back onto the model, basically, and like rendered that in such a way that it would match up. Yeah, I mean, I'm an artist. What I am most passionate about making kind of specifically doesn't have an application. It like exists. And hopefully it has this affective quality on other people. I actually normally do more to talk about concepts. I was like, oh, I don't necessarily have to do that this time. But I think that, and also, of course, that changes over time. It's like why I made certain work, like 3 years ago, like is not the same reason that I might attribute to it now. But I've been really interested in, like Susan Sontag and like what she has to say about like about the affective quality of art and like sort of the incantory or like ritualistic power of art, as opposed to it being sort of interpreted or sort of, I guess, like dragged too much into like a theory. All the music was by Cadet. I found Cadet years ago. She posted an ad on Craigslist for like getting help with Max Jitter, which I was super into at the time, and so I helped her do some jitter stuff for an installation, and we've just kept in touch. And I just really like her work, and we've worked together a few times since. It's just been this, this relationship that's really blossomed. And she's older than me. She's like I think about 10 years older than me, and so she also is kind of this person that I look up to. It's actually the work that I showed at the end. I'm like continuing to do that. I've been like milling some acrylic and like doing some more 3D printing, and so it's actually kind of I'm just kind of following that idea further and seeing what else I can do with it. In layman's terms, so a media server is like a big computer with a big graphics card, like a gaming computer or something like that. And then what's happening is like they're each rendering as much as they can. And then, in order to like put video out to the projectors, and so I think we actually only had each one do like 2 channels of video. So in order to keep it fast, and so in order to like have them all stay in sync, that was sort of like part of my job, was keep them all in sync. We actually had the whole thing networked. It's actually very much like this, in that there's a model. It's been textured with the content that's been like sort of designed and rendered way back at the studio, and then we're on site and we're like adjusting it to the building. I actually think about that a lot. So I think so. Nietzsche, has this essay where he basically sets up this dichotomy between like performing artists and technical artists. He says it's like the Dionysian artists, like basically dancers or drunks. No, and the Apollonic, or like the sculptor artists. So and the performing artist, you know, they are the art. They embody the art, and like everything that they're feeling in the moment, like, is the art. So whereas like the technical artist is separate from the work. They like get to sculpt it and then step back, and that's the work. And I think that I really am sort of more on the technical, like, sculptor side, and that I love the process of doing technical work, and I'm very uncomfortable being the work. And so when I perform, it's really like I try to keep that distance a little bit, like I'm pushing all the buttons and I'm like controlling it live, and I love having that control, but I like don't want to actually be like the art. So but they have these really different qualities, you know. It's such a rush to do a performance, you know, and there's something, I think, like, there's this profound quality of, like, bringing people together. Again, this idea of, like, ritualistic or incantory art. Like, when you bring people together in a space and have a performance, it's really, there's something, like, that's kind of intrinsically meaningful about that, which is why I think, like, in the digital age, you know, like, people are still willing to pay, like, $100 to go see a concert. Like, even though you have all of that music at your fingertips, you still want that live performance. So, you know, and so I like working with that. But I also, in some ways, am more comfortable sort of making something and then putting it on a pedestal and, like, stepping away. You know, there's all of this sort of, like, sensory experience that is hard to capture, like, with a smaller device or, like, with a screen like this. Like, this screen is probably taking up, you know, like, what, like, just a really small portion of your vision. And so I think in some ways it just really is not that engaging, because there's all of this other stimuli that's, like, distracting, and also it just doesn't have that much of an effect on you. We think of sight as being this very objective process, but actually it is this very embodied and corporeal process. So, you know, when I'm, like, working in a dome or something like that, and I'm able to, like, fill the whole visual field, it actually, I think that it physiologically affects people much more. So yeah, I think, like, presence, there's, like, this physiological aspect to it where it actually is a lot more engaging to your nervous system. But then also I think that there's this, the significance of, like, going to see a work or going to see a performance, and, like, being with it is special, to keep name dropping. So Walter Benjamin also writes about this. Of course, there's a really good chance that you've read what he has to say about the aura of the work or whatever. But he, you know, he's, like, sort of contrasting, again, like, ritualistic artwork that might be, like, in a temple with, like, mass media and propaganda. You know, and he talks about, like, the mysteriousness and the cult value of having, like, the statue in the temple that you have to make a pilgrimage to go see. And so, I don't know, it's hard to keep that alive, because in order to share and communicate work, it's like you can't just, like, leave it stashed away somewhere. But I think that is really one of the ideal experiences for me, for myself, of art, and for, like, sharing my art with other people. Yeah, I guess that's kind of the downside of projection, is that it's really not very bright, and in order for it to have visual impact, it really needs to be in a darker space. Again, coming back to these sort of, like, the subconscious impact of work. You know, like, if this is really washed out, if this were in a light space, you would understand what was on it, but it just wouldn't, like, feel the same. You'd be like, oh, like, yeah, that's interesting. Whereas when it's this sort of glowing, like, luminous thing, it has so much more impactful. Yeah, and so lighting is always a huge consideration around projection. And so whenever you want to show projection in a gallery show where there's, like, other kinds of work, you know, all of the other work needs to be lit really well. And so that's always kind of a struggle. I think that there's some interesting power and, like, capacity for storytelling and performance. It is like a very different medium, and I think that it's interesting to sort of bring, to do video as a performance. There's a lot of great artists doing work in this area. some of my favorites being like Elise Baldwin, she's local, or like Martha Colburn. She does these crazy like stop motion animations, but then she does them as a live thing. She like gets a band to come, and because I think again those artists are interested in this quality of like bringing people together to see the work. That's a controversial question. I mean, I think that definition for other people is basically like design is for things that are useful and art is for things that are not useful. but that's just kind of like the current divide, right? I think I love being an artist because it's like I can make whatever I want. Like no one has to like it for me to keep being an artist. Like it doesn't have to, you know, in our society, it's a very individualistic practice. And whereas I think, like to me, being a designer kind of means that you're much more engaged in like something that is for other people or that like solves a specific problem. I think, yeah, the beauty of art is that I like create my own constraints and I can do whatever I want, but sometimes maybe the downside is that it doesn't necessarily engage or like serve people. Oh, immensely. I mean, I studied art. I have a studio art undergrad, and I was making like kind of weird like interactive video installations in my undergrad, but I just kind of didn't have that much technical skill, and so doing the commercial work just allowed me to really develop a craft and a skill that I have then turned around. I just sort of coincidentally like met the director of Obscura Digital's interactive department at a gallery show, and I was like, take me on as an intern, and they kind of didn't know what to do with me, but they're like, okay, and I just worked really hard, and I did everything that they asked me to do, and they kept promoting me. So I went from being an intern to being like a senior developer. I was like the lead developer on the projects that I showed you. I think my ambition is that it be for art and not for advertising. I got in a cab in New York, and there's like some screen in the cab, and it's like broken, and it's like flashing, it's like really poorly portraying some ad, and it's like right in my face, and I couldn't turn it off. It was broken and I couldn't stop it. I was like stuck with this thing for and that's really the future of this technology, unfortunately. Like, just to be a little bit pessimistic, that's what's going to happen. So but my hope is that people can continue to make really beautiful things with it, and not just broken cab ads. Well, I did bring someone to tears with the Carapace performance. So that's as good as it gets, pretty much. I think I recently had a piece in a gallery, and it was kind of tucked back in a corner because I kind of wanted it to be like in a quieter, darker space. And there were some kids running around the gallery and like looking at everything, and one of them kind of went around the corner and saw my work and came out and like got his friend and was like, "Come here, like check this out." And I was like, "Okay, that's success."